Good evening. Black is the Body. Chapter 2, Teaching the N-Word. What, do I look at the screen or do I look at you, right? It's always a question. So, diet. The D stands for describe. And this is really like in lieu of a quiz, right? You want to make sure I've read it and I can tell you about it. And I'll tell you, if this was a quiz, I'd probably get like an 80 or so. It's been a couple days. And I don't know if I'm about to describe myself as an idiot or if I'm just going to describe myself as a thinker. But it tends to be, for me at least, that I retain themes and ideas more than details and storylines sometimes. So I hope that doesn't make me sound stupid. But yeah, when it comes to the book, she takes about 3 different stories, maybe 4, where she talks about her experience with the N-word. In no particular order, she talks about a friend she has that had a ski instructor, and he changed and he didn't change, and Emily Bernard, that is, was talking to her friend, and they keep talking about the ski instructor, and she tells her about her experience with the N-word. It ends with a slick joke about, using the N-word. And as to people of color, it went to be something humorous, and it worked out for them. She also talks a lot about the class discussion, and this is one of the stories she tells all the people in the book, but she talks about a class discussion she had with the N-word on the book, or it may have just been on the N-word itself, but the book may have been involved. I know the book was with the individual student that came in, so she goes and talks to her class about the N-word and what they should do, and one of the lines that made me chuckle was she was talking about a white boy, I forget his name, that listens to Jay-Z, were her words, and made a case for the N-word with an A at the end of it. And we've all known someone like that at one point of our lives where they make the case, and it's humorous because you can sense the amount of ignorance coming from that person, and you can read the judgment in her description of him. She doesn't ever really get too judgmental of even the word or the people, and I think that's kind of one of her themes, is as the reader we should already really know why that word should or should not be used, right? And so Emily Bernard is she's gonna spare us the history of the N-word and the reasons why it's bad and shouldn't be used. She's just gonna assume that we know that. If we're reading Black is the Body, chances are we know why we shouldn't be using the N-word, right? You're not gonna find a lot of these at the Trump rally. They're not gonna be busting these out and wondering if they should or shouldn't. No. She's assuming that we know about this word. And so then she's going off of that, and she's just telling stories about it. She's giving her commentary. And that's another thing, like we talked about in the intro, about how she's not necessarily trying to give these great narratives of bad and evil and race in America. She's giving personal stories. She's giving insight, her stories. And that's a neat approach, especially when it comes to the N-word, right? So yeah, the one theme that I really liked is she was talking about how, she was talking about the N-word. She wasn't talking about specifically why it's bad. She was just letting the context of the stories, the kids in class, the kid in her office, the friend in the car, even talks with her husband, even talks with the one other intellectual who was afraid of marrying a white man because he would call her the N-word. So yeah, that was just a little touch back on the D to make sure I read that book. But anyways, yeah, all those stories that she tells, gives a sense of an undertone of judgment, but you should know why. She never flat out says not to use it. She never flat out says to use it. Well, she might, actually. She I think she hints at it a couple times. She says that she would rather not, or doesn't want to win an argument where someone says the N word. Yeah, that was another humor part too. But she kind of lets us come with our own understanding of what the word means, and then she works her stories into that. And honestly, especially reading the one about her in the class, I was amazed at the amount of times she would hear the N-word from these white people and hold her tongue about it. That's kind of what she does in the whole chapter. A lot of it is her holding her tongue and letting the ignorant speak for itself. Another theme, and I hope we're on the I maybe, interpret. Another theme we're talking about here is reluctance, right? I almost felt that this chapter was reluctant. It almost dragged at points. It almost like didn't want to continue because some of the conversations were reluctant and awkward and didn't want to go. I don't think Emily Bernard is an idiot. I think when she breaks up the story of her talking to her class and makes it grind at points, I think that's because talking about the N-word can be reluctant and can be dragging sometimes. It's uncomfortable. So you feel that as the reader. You feel it in her description of what's going on, and you feel that in just the writing itself. I think the E might stand for examine or evaluate. Evaluate. That's certainly it. I think that teaching the N-word is a good chapter. Frankly, I like it a little more than the scar tissue, because while the scar tissue was packed with some pretty cool metaphors and it was interesting and jolting, the N-word one was a conversation that you don't hear a lot. I mean, the fact that she was in Vermont talking to all these white kids about the N-word, and then you could take away from that what you wanted, that was a unique perspective and a neat one to read. So I really liked being able to hear it from how she felt, how she talked to these kids, and what she got out of that. Oh, man. DIET. Come on, what does the T stand for? It's not like I have my canvas pulled up right now. I'm just, sitting around reading. I'm not sure if I can get what the T stands for. But I can tell you that black is the body, teaching the N-word. My main pulls-aways. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's theme. Or takeaway, perhaps. Let's go with that. Let's run off with takeaway. So that's what I think. I'm going to go back to my I, and my main themes in this one, and what I'm going to talk about in class is I think it was a lot of reluctance. I think it was a lot of holding of her tongue and letting the ignorant speak for itself.